In Notes from the Underground, in the first 3 chapters, the man from the underground, we'll call him Underground Man, goes on to explain how he is spiteful. You see, his liver is killing him, and he refuses to go and consult a doctor out of spite for doctors and for his liver. And that is how deep his hatred goes. We go on to see that he describes hyperconsciousness as paralyzing. He says he sees all angles of life, and in that he is hesitant in action because he knows oh so much. Then he goes on to say that the men who have made something of themselves or have done something are fools, as they are restricted in intelligence. They don't see the world so fully, so they are less hesitant. So the more accomplished man is more intellectually limited from the perspective of the man from the underground. Now, I would push back from that idea by saying, well, maybe the only reason the man from the underground hasn't accomplished anything or is hesitant in action is, number one, he is unlazy, which isn't a desirable trait. He might be, unable to accomplish things. So it seems as if he's trying to aestheticize a lack of accomplishment. Which now will lead me on to my next talking point, which is being too logical. He finds being too logical strips us of humanity, and in only doing the logical thing, we, in a sense, make ourselves machine-like by ignoring desires for logical outcomes. Now, the underground man isn't attacking logic, rather pure logic, the purely logical man, not logic in of itself. However, later in the book, he goes on to say, 2 plus 2 equals 5, because man would sometimes choose that just to prove himself free, which I find very interesting, and sometimes often true. If we look at philosophy, sometimes people will often reject philosophical ideas, no matter how logical, for the sake of being free from the consequences that derive from it. And going back to the idea of men of action and accomplishment, and how the underground man calls them limited. Let's go back to this. He envies the same men of action just as much as he hates them. See, with this, I think it's very reasonable to conclude he has no idea what he wants. He's just simply unsatisfied, and I would say, in a sense, self-hating. I would like to go back and discuss his inaction. He often says he will do things, such as start a fight with a military officer, but he never does it. He never does much of anything. Now, why do I bring it up that he is a man who does not act? Well, because the author makes that very punctual. He makes it a point that there are those who act and those who don't. And as we see in the book, the underground man has an intense self-hatred and hatred for all things. But the reason he hates himself is because of his inability to act. But as we previously discussed, he romanticizes that. And I think he does that as a form of coping for his inability and cowardice. See, I believe the underground man was made to be relatable on a minor scale, as we have aspects of ourselves that we most likely hate, or we have been spiteful, and we have procrastinated. But see, the difference is, hopefully the difference is that's not a permanent thing. We do eventually do the thing we told ourselves we will do. And I think we're meant to relate to this character as a warning that inability and getting comfortable with lack of action leads to this self-hatred, to this loathing. See, the underground man, he is angry at himself for what he claims. Now, he claims he is not spiteful, and he is mad about that. He says he is simply bored, and that he alleviates this boredom by inconveniencing people at every possible chance. But you see, we can see within the book that he is spiteful. See, he's contradictory to himself often. And I think this shows, number one, he doesn't know what he wants, but number two, that he's kind of unreliable on his own description. And if he's unreliable on his own description, which is like 90% of the book, how can we trust him on anything he says about himself? Especially since we've established he loves inconveniencing people. Would he not try and inconvenience the reader of his notes? He makes a connection with a prostitute, Eliza, and he plans to meet with her at his apartment flat. However, when she gets there, he goes out of his way to insult her. Now, he does this because he knows a reintroduction into society would be difficult. Now, why do I bring this up? Because I believe at the very essence of his character is someone who is avoidant at all costs from suffering, from meaning, from any hardship, which is what creates his cowardice, and his cowardice creates his self-hatred, and his self-hatred creates his loathing towards all else. And I think that's another warning, an avoidant lifestyle. So, to give a character summary, he is avoidant, inactive, self-loathing, uninsured, ignorant of what he wants. He is also a spiteful, bitter, old man. He is 40, which isn't old, middle-aged, but you get what I'm saying, past his prime. See, the ultimate warning is this. Allow me to give you what I think is the single best piece of advice from notes from the underground. And that is to act. To not become stagnant in thought only.